Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley. Joining me in just a matter of moments will be from Glenn Clark Radio on the Press Box Airwaves and 105.7 The Fan, Griffin Bass. He'll be joining us to do the whole hour here talking about the Orioles, their off season, the latest rumblings around Major League Baseball, and more. I want to remind you, today's show is brought to you by Royal Farms. Royal Farms' world famous chicken is always fresh, never frozen. And right now, you can get either a 10-piece dark or an 8-piece mix for just $15. Or get a 4-piece mix with Western fries and a biscuit for just $10. And in the morning, enjoy any size hot or iced coffee and a breakfast sandwich for just $5. That's a deal you cannot beat. Plus, have you tried their new baby cake hash browns? Get out there and try them today. Stop into your neighborhood Royal Farms today. All right, a little bit of news to announce with the Orioles from this past week. Again, special thank you to Zach Moore of PigTownSports for joining us for the show last week. One of the longest shows we've ever done since we entered the new iteration of this program, the 1-hour program. We went over 2 hours with Zach, but had a lot of stuff to cover. And joining us now is Griffin Bass from Glenn Clark Radio. Griffin, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. Paul, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry I was a little late getting the link over to
You're all
you.
good.
Was just doing some work here at the office and, again, lost track of time. So, Griffin, we were just about to talk about the Orioles' announcement of their new coaching staff and some of the names that were prevalent on this coaching staff. Cody Ashe was promoted from offensive strategist to hitting coach. Sherman Johnson is the assistant hitting coach and upper-level hitting coordinator. He was, of course, the Bowie Bay Sox hitting coach in 2023, now the Chesapeake Bay Sox. And he was promoted to the upper-level hitting coordinator in February of 2024. So he gets that bump up to a major league role as assistant hitting coach and keeping his upper-level hitting coordinator title. And then Tommy Joseph is the assistant hitting coach, Griffin. He was the hitting coach for low A and for low A for the Mets in 2021 and double A for them in 2022. Hitting coach for high A in San Francisco in 2023. And he was the Mariners' assistant hitting coach in 2024. There's a couple of other guys that were added to this coaching staff that we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth here in just a minute. But I want to talk about the hitting coaches first because the Orioles really struggled, especially in the second half offensively last year. And it reared its ugly head in the postseason where they scored 1 run in 2 games, getting swept in the wild card round. And they get rid of their 2 hitting coaches in Ryan Fuller and Matt Bowman. But they promote their offensive strategist in Cody Ashe to hitting coach. They bring in a guy who has very little experience in Sherman Johnson to make him the assistant hitting coach. And then they bring in Tommy Joseph, who was the assistant hitting coach for the Mariners. He's fulfilling the same role for the Orioles this coming season. Griffin, the Mariners last year, last I checked, were really bad offensively. They were 29th in batting average in baseball, but ahead of only the lowly Chicago White Sox, who are historically the worst team in the modern era of baseball history. They were 21st in runs scored. They scored just 4.17 runs per game. 27th in doubles, 29th in triples, middle of the pack in home runs and on-base percentage. Their .311 on-base percentage was still 4 points below the Orioles' .315 on-base percentage. I can't make a lot of sense out of promoting a guy within your system from a team that really struggled down the stretch offensively, and then bringing another guy who has little experience, and then another guy who was on one of the worst offenses in baseball. He was at the helm of that team. Your thoughts on the Orioles hitting coaches?
Yeah, it is. It is very interesting. I guess they're trying to attack it with this. You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. I mean, maybe you can, but you want to have different perspectives, different ideas. Maybe you can look at Tommy Joseph coming from Seattle. He at least saw what I guess wasn't necessarily working for the Mariners. So he can bring in a different perspective. You think that the Orioles have more talented hitters as well, so potentially just the Mariners just weren't the players just literally just weren't just couldn't improve any further than like where they were. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the Kobayashi one I think makes sense. It seems like they always they do like the guys that they have in their organization, and they do a good job of rewarding them, the guys that they do like. So I think that one makes that one makes some sense. And I don't know. I guess what Kobayashi, I'm sure, worked with Tommy Joseph and who was the third one that they announced already?
Sherman Johnson.
Sherman Johnson, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, I assume that he has relationships with those guys, and just has to be guys that he trusts. Otherwise, like why would Mike Elias go out of his way to find why would they go out of their way to find guys that don't have that they don't know? I'm sure it's three guys that they trust a lot, and we have to trust that, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with you in the sense that Mike Elias, he's not going to bring in guys he doesn't think can do the job, right? And the same thing with Brandon Hyde. I wonder how much say Brandon Hyde gets in choosing his coaching staff. I'm sure he gets to pick his guys, but at the same time, Brandon Hyde was at the helm of this team that they were awful from basically the second half of June on last season offensively, but if they think that these guys have something that can get the Orioles up and running, they have a ton of talent on their roster. They have too much talent to have swung the bats the way they did last year. We talked about the injuries with the pitching all season long. They didn't really have injuries offensively. Yeah, at the end of July, Jordan Westburg broke his hand, and then you had the hamstring injury with Ramon Arias. But other than that, they were pretty healthy, and it just seemed like these guys just kind of wore down, especially Adley Rutschman. Gunnar didn't have a great second half. He had a decent one, but not compared to his first half. Santander, I mean, we talked at length last week about how he only hits in basically June, July, and the first half of August. So we'll see what's going to happen here. I think that they have a lot of talent that can hide some things, that can hide some warts. But I also think that maybe if they're bringing these guys in, they think that they have something that can unlock the potential for guys like Jackson Holliday and potentially Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, because those guys could have bigger roles this year depending on what happens in free agency and with their own free agents.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes a lot of sense. They got to bring in some fresh perspectives, and more. I guess more the merrier. Because you got to bring in some fresh perspectives to shake things up. Just because, obviously, as you said, the second half of last season was absolutely not getting it done, and the injuries were certainly a factor. But you can't blame it all on that, because you still had the blue blood guys, like the blue chip prospects, were healthy and they were playing playing, and they weren't hitting either. So.
Exactly.
A change had to happen. It's going to be hard to, say that this is the wrong decision, that any of these are the wrong decisions right now in November,
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the spring. And like I said, a lot of the talent could hide. We aren't really going to fully know unless they come out and they're hitting the first half like they did the second half this past season. We're not really going to know because, one, you've got some young guys. You're going to be rejuvenated entering a new season. You're going to get into the warm months. Some of these guys are going to take steps forward. And we also don't know who the Orioles are going to add offensively in free agency. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show, but we do know that the Orioles added two brand new names to their coaching staff. In addition to those hitting coaches, Robinson Chirinos, if you remember, he was the Orioles starting catcher in 2022 and then became Adley Rutschman's backup once Rutschman came up towards the end of May. He lands his first major or minor league coaching gig as bench coach, which means he's one step down from Brandon Hyde Griffin, filling Freddie Gonzalez's vacated role. He's the guy who's going to be helping Brandon Hyde make those managerial decisions. And he's the guy that if Brandon Hyde gets ejected, Robinson Chirinos becomes your new manager. Now, we saw Stephen Vogt. He retired after the 2022 season, very similarly to Robinson Chirinos. He became the Mariners' bullpen and quality control coach in 2023 before being named manager of the Cleveland Guardians this past year. And I believe that Vogt was a finalist for Manager of the Year. The Cleveland Guardians ended up winning the AL Central, making it into the playoffs, giving the Yankees a run for their money there too. And really adding Robinson Chirinos and then Buck Britton to this coaching staff. Buck Britton's the one that everybody knows, right? Buck Britton, fulfills I keep saying fulfills. He fills the role of major league coach. Jose Hernandez was in that role last year. According to Hernandez, through Rockabaco, he helped with infielders, outfielders, he hit grounders. Basically, that
Little,
role is a jack of all trades.
yeah,
And with Buck, his contract expired with Norfolk on October 31st. The Orioles were afraid they were going to lose him. They added him to their staff. He has experience with winning a lot of minor league baseball games at high A, double A, triple A, with a lot of the young talent that's either already on the Orioles roster or going to be debuting with the Orioles in the coming months or years. To me, I look at this and I say, one, I love adding Chirinos because we know what happened with Adley this past year. His defensive metrics were down across the board. The offense was really waning from the end of June on. It looked like he had put on some extra weight, and he was a great mentor to Adley when Adley was the best defensive catcher that he's been in his career, and that was in his first season. And then with Buck Britton, he's got the ears of everybody, of all the young players on the team. These are very, very like low key, but very interesting moves to me. And I'm wondering if this is kind of like Brandon Hyde is on the hot seat without saying he's on the hot seat.
Yeah, it would be, man. That is an interesting angle to look at it. It would be, I mean, it'd be very interesting to say like, hey, man, your replacement's in the building now. Like that definitely be scary if I was Brandon Hyde. And I mean, and also you could very easily argue that it's definitely warranted, with the way that things ended last season. But as a whole, though, I agree with everything you said. It's hard not to dislike either of those two names that we see. Buck Britton, obviously, as you mentioned, having a lot of experience working with all these guys that we now see on this major league roster. Well, not all of them, but most of them that we now see on this major league roster. So he knows how they work. He knows what gets them ticking. And yeah, I mean, it seems like it could very easily be, as you said, a very underrated hiring because we're not exactly sure what he's going to do right now, and it's probably going to be a little bit of everything. He knows Gunnar well. He knows he knows Kjerstad and Cowser and even Mullins well. Like he's going to be able to work with both the infield and the outfield, and I'm sure I'm not sure if we need a fourth hitting coach, but I'm sure he can contribute to that too if they need more help in the batting cages. And yeah, obviously a guy that knows how to win as well, even if it's at a level below Major League Baseball. It's a guy that knows how to win and win specifically with these guys. The Robinson Chirinos one is definitely very, very interesting. That one stuck out to me, I think, the most once they did announce the official coaching staff. So Stan and Glenn had a conversation with Brandon Hyde. I mean, I know it was published in a press box last season, I think, when we did our best of issue for 2023. And what was interesting was that they asked Brandon Hyde, this was, following the 2022 season, and then it was following the 2023 season. So after 22 into 23, and then they started winning, won the division in 2023. And they asked Brandon Hyde, what was one of the biggest, what was one of the most underrated things that was part of the this franchise turnaround in 22 and 23. And without kind of hesitation, Brandon Hyde threw out Robinson Chirinos as a guy that was just such a big factor of leading all these young guys. This was when Adley was coming up and Gunnar coming up, and he was effusive about how big Chirinos was in carrying these guys along and keeping everybody's head up and just putting in the work. So Chirinos is definitely a really, really interesting one that I'm kind of excited about to see. Just to see. I'm sure all the guys will be happy to see him back. So that one's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard talk about Robinson Chirinos, being potentially a future major league coach and major league manager. And I think that this is the first of those steps, and it could be something that happens quickly for him, whether it's here, whether it's someplace else. Manager turnover happens every year in Major League Baseball. This guy could find himself a big league job. And I don't know that they put it in those words to Brandon Hyde where they said your replacement's on the big league staff. But I do think that they probably went to Brandon Hyde after, before they had that, I guarantee you they had conversations after that playoff loss, right? And they probably said to him, like, look, we're going to keep you, but you've got to start winning playoff games. You've got to find a way to win playoff games. We're going to bring in a whole new coaching staff with you based on your input and our input. And I guarantee they said to him, if you don't start winning games, you might not have that opportunity. And again, maybe not in so many words, but they probably made that message very clear that getting into the playoffs is no longer the goal. The goal is now advancing in the playoffs and getting closer and closer to ultimately winning that World Series. If the Orioles don't win a World Series in 2025, I don't think that that's going to be an issue for the fan base. I think the real issue is going to be if the Orioles make the playoff. If they don't make the playoffs, they're going to burn that place to the ground. But if the Orioles is not making the playoffs, it's can you get not to the division series? They've already been there. Get to the American League Championship Series. And when you get there, the last time you were there, you got swept. The Orioles have been to 3 American League Championship Series since their last World Series win. They lost 4 games to 2 in the first 2. They lost that was in 96 and 97. And then they got swept in 2014. So it's, can you get to the American League Championship Series? Can you be competitive in that championship series? Make this be a 7-game series, or can you advance to a World Series? For me, I think that the writing is on the wall with bringing in Buck Britton and Robinson Chirinos. You don't want to lose Buck Britton. Okay, well, why don't you want to lose Buck Britton? Right? Do you think of him as somebody who could be a future manager for you? Is Robinson Chirinos a future manager for you? The writing's on the wall that, like, look, you got to get to the playoffs and you got to start winning some games, and not just win games. You got to win some series and advance. If Brandon Hyde does that this year, if they win the division or they get into the wild card round, but that's the other thing. You can't just win the wild card round. I think that they have to advance to the ALCS for Hyde to be safe in his job. That's just one man's opinion. I could be wrong here, but I'd like to get your take on that, Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. It's going to be hard to argue with that, because of the lack of playoff success that they had the last 2 seasons. So at a bare minimum, you're going to have to see he's going to have to win a playoff game. He's going to have to win and probably at least 2, depending on where they start. Whether they start in the wild card series, or I think they're going to have to win. I would say at least 2 ALDS games. I think that would be kind of the bare minimum. They'd have to look competitive in an ALDS at a bare minimum. And I mean, depending on, what goes on throughout the season, if everybody stays, knock on wood, if everybody stays completely healthy and they're limping into the playoffs still, similar to how they were this year, even though they did have the injuries this year as somewhat as somewhat of an excuse. But if they're battling injuries and it's all going to be just what this team looks like come September of next year. But I think I would agree that they do have to win. They have to win. They have to win multiple playoff games. And I'm sure he probably feels that he's not going to be truly safe unless it is an ALCS berth. So I largely agree. Yes.
Absolutely. I dropped my right ear pod. I have no idea where it went. It didn't even make a clang when it hit the ground. So maybe it didn't hit the ground. I have no clue. But it's driving me nuts right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to take this out and just do it using the speakers on the show itself. So can you guys hear me?
Yes, I got you. You got me?
See, I can't hear you at all. So I'll just put it right back on in. So I want to get a little bit of fan interaction here. PigTownSports, that's Zach Moore. He says, "Morning, gentlemen." Morning, Zach. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the shout out on X this morning, asking people to tune in to our show. Zach, of course, did an excellent job co-hosting the show with me last week. Just a bit outside says, "What's up? What's up, man? Thanks for joining the show," or woman, whoever you are. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate you tuning in. Zach goes on to say, "Just win a playoff game. If you don't make the playoffs, that's a giant step back." I don't foresee the Orioles not making the playoffs unless they have like more of the same injuries that they had, that they had last season, or like an Atlanta Braves type of injury situation.
Right.
I don't foresee them not making the playoffs. That would be a huge step back. I think they're going to take a step forward this year. But again, we've got to see what they're going to do in the
Yeah,
off.
and maybe I'll revise my statement a little bit. I think maybe win a playoff series. So if it ends up being a wild card series, you'd prefer it to be that one series you win be an ALDS at a minimum. But I do think like winning multiple playoff games is absolutely absolutely has to be the low bar. Again, depending what happens throughout the season, but winning multiple playoff games. So if that means just winning 2 games and that's a wild card series, that is an improvement, obviously, on what happened in 2024. But if they're able to automatically get right into the ALDS, they have to win that series. They have to win their first playoff series, I think, is the way I'm going to revise my statement.
Absolutely. Now, so Griffin, if they win a wild card series,
yeah,
you're okay with that? You don't think that they need to get past the ALDS because they've already been there? Like if they've already been to the ALDS and then they go back to the wild card and they don't get out of that, that's kind of already a step back. So you don't think that they need to take a step back and then a step forward to get to where they already were, or should they be taking 2 steps forward?
Well, it's just so interesting to because I guess what we want to compare everything to that 2023 season. They won 100 games. Like they were shooting a little bit over their head in 2023. Like no one thought they were going to win 100 freaking baseball games, 101 freaking baseball games. And they just unfortunately, the Rangers obviously evidently were a buzzsaw in 2023, so they ran into that. Oh, you found your AirPod. Good. But I think it's tough to base everything off of what happened in 2023 because they were so much. They were a very young team. They were such a surprise to everyone. I think obviously they had to make the playoffs last year. That was part of the expectation. It was just how weird that season played out with all the different injuries, them still being able to, be a very good ball club, but being a 500 baseball team from July on, from late June on, it was just very interesting that they were never able to right that ship. I think they need to do better than 2024. That's the bar that I'm basing it off of. I'm glad that you have very high hopes for them and that you want to see them, be in the ALCS. I think that's definitely, we should be expecting them in the ALCS, but I think they need to be better than 2024. So that's why win a playoff series is what I believe the bar should be.
And that's fair. And your point that they played over their heads in 2023, I don't think you can understate that. That team had no business winning 101 games, and yet they got hot, and they just never stopped until they got to the point where you really can't stop, and they stopped, and that was in the postseason. I don't know, man. It's really hard because Griffin, how old are you?
I am 24.
You're 24.
Yes.
So you're 24. So you were born right at the beginning stages of the dark ages.
Correct.
When you were born, I was already a sophomore in high school. All right. And so like for me, I just turned 40 this year, and I look at the Orioles as having not won a World Series since 1983. Their last World Series, they won it a year before I was born. And so I've never seen it. And so I've seen the Orioles get to the ALDS, the ALCS, the wild card round, the wild card game. I've never seen them advance to the World Series. So for me, and a lot of people my age, and even people younger, even people older, yes, you want them to do better than they did in 2024. But simply getting to the ALDS, it's like, no, we gotta see more steps. I get what you're saying. If they're better than 2024, it's a win. But I think the majority of the fan base thinks that the ALCS is where they have to get this year to feel okay with how the season goes. And it's kind of like the Ravens, where they have gotten now to the AFC Championship game with Lamar Jackson. Well, now you've got to get to the Super Bowl. You've got to get to a Super Bowl. You've got to win a Super Bowl. And anything short of that, we're not going to be happy with. And I think that's kind of where the Orioles are with regards to the ALCS.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of it is going to depend on, what does the rest of the league look like? Like it is, and that's just to not go too far off topic, but talking about like the NFL, it is so hard to win in the NFL. Like we have not had a different Super Bowl champion in 3 years now. Like it's like if you're not the Chiefs, every fan base, maybe the Detroit Lions, I guess you can throw in there. If you're not the Chiefs or the Lions fan bases, you are pissed off right now because you just haven't won anything. And it's kind of similar for baseball too. We are very used to it's going to be the Dodgers. The Yankees are going to be good too, and so it's tough to win a World Series. It is really tough to win a World Series. You don't see, there's a reason that a lot of those bottom feeder franchises have been, at the bottom of Major League Baseball for so long. So it is. I want to be greedy as well. I want to, I want to believe that the Orioles should be favorites to win the 2025 World Series. But it is really tough when you look around the rest of baseball, and that the Yankees are going to be spending half $1 billion. The Dodgers are going to spend $1 billion. And I mean, I think you have to keep that all a factor as well. And if the Yankees end up dealing with a ton of injuries, the Red Sox deal with a ton of injuries, then there is then that kind of makes the path a lot more clear. And then the goal should change as the season goes on. Especially depending on what the rest of the teams in the league look like.
Absolutely. And I think that will, like you said, depending on how the team is playing, the goals could go down, they could go up. In 2023. They were playing so well. We were talking about World Series, and then they get ousted in the division series, and it's like, well, it was a huge letdown. So we'll see how the season plays out. You mentioned the Dodgers. The Dodgers made a big signing of Blake Snell. We're about to get into that. But if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. All right. Blake Snell signs with the Dodgers, Griffin, 5 years, $182 million. He gets a $52 million signing bonus, which now turns into 5 years, $130 million. And then he has $65 million deferred, which now turns it to 5 years, $65 million, which means he's getting $13 million per season for the duration of the contract. And then he'll be paid out the other $65 million over the course of time. Maybe it's like a Bobby Bonilla or Chris Davis type of deal. Maybe I imagine they'll pay him out in small increments. He's probably not planning on pitching far past this contract anyway, being that he's already in his early 30s. Maybe this is his last big contract, and then after it's up, he says, "Okay, I'm just going to sit back, collect $2 to $3 million from the Dodgers while sitting on the beach on my Malibu property for the rest of my life." This is a guy who has only made 30 starts in the season twice. He's only pitched over 130 innings in the season twice. Both 30 start seasons and 130 plus innings happened in the same seasons, 2018 and 2023, and he just happened to win the Cy Young both of those seasons. This past year, from about the beginning of July on, he was the best pitcher in baseball, and it wasn't close. But still, Griffin, a lot of money for a guy who averages just under 122 innings pitched per season over a 9-year career. Routinely doesn't get past the 5th or 6th inning. And with this deferred money, Griffin, the Dodgers are in a situation where they can still go add a frontline starting pitcher or a big bat, because their projected payroll is still under $200 million, despite the fact that they signed Ohtani for $700 million last year, and they gave almost $200 million to Blake Snell this year, plus Freddie Freeman, plus Mookie Betts. You look at this team, the rich keep getting richer. Your thoughts on the Dodgers adding Blake Snell, getting that deferred money so they can potentially get more top line players, and what it means for the game of Major League Baseball?
I mean, yeah, it's no brainer for the Dodgers, really, just because it means nothing to them. They will continue to empty the pocketbook. I mean, that was my first thought. It was like, man, I wish that meant that means there's one less team out on Corbin Burns, but it doesn't. The Dodgers are going to continue to spend money. They're going to figure out ways to they're going to figure out ways to shuffle the money around, and they're not going to mind paying guys 15 years after their last inning as a Dodger. So good for Blake Snell. I mean, agree with everything you said. He's in his 30s now, and he's obviously been, the best pitcher in baseball multiple seasons. But it is, I guess this is just going to be the way the market looks now. That 200 innings is no longer, that doesn't. I mean, obviously that's going to be that means a lot, 200 innings. But you don't have to hit 200 innings to be considered, the best pitcher in baseball, the best pitcher in your league for a season, and be paid and be compensated as such. So yeah, good for the Dodgers. Well, I don't know who it's the Dodgers. I don't feel that good for Blake Snell is what I meant. But and it makes sense. They've seen him in their division, so they just that knocks out a couple birds with one stone there for the Dodgers. As looks like they're certainly going to be will be the favorite once again to win the World Series. It's for the rest of baseball, it's just gonna drive up the price a little bit more for all those guys that we have circled, whether it's Corbin Burns, Max Fried. Those are the two that are certainly at the top of, I believe, every single Orioles fans list. Just going to have to, I mean, they're going to have to spend money. The Orioles are going to have to spend money. The rest of the league, the rest of baseball is going to have to spend money if they want a pitcher. And, they know that. Everyone knows that it's going to take a lot. And it'll be interesting to see if Blake Snell set the market, are Burns and Fried going to get more? Or are they going to get slightly below what Fried got here? So it'll be interesting to see how the next our winter meetings next weekend. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, they start. Everybody arrives in Dallas on next Sunday, and then they arrive in Dallas that Sunday, and they start that Sunday, the 8th, December 8th. So yeah, they start next weekend, and it was rumored from John Paul Morosi that it was down to that the Orioles and the Dodgers stood above everybody else when it came to Corbin Burns. Dodgers have just signed Blake Snell. Are they going to go get Corbin Burns still? Are the Mets going to make a play for Corbin Burns? Does Corbin Burns want to be in Baltimore? I think Corbin Burns will play for the team that offers him the most money and gives him the best chance to win. I think it needs to be a combination of those things. I don't think he's going to go sign for $40 million a year to play for the Angels, even though that was his team growing up. I don't think that they've done, even though they've signed Kikuchi and they added Jorge Soler, I think that he would need to see them do more to say, yeah, you guys are going to win for the next 5-6 years. And what's that contract going to look like for Corbin Burns? He's 31 years old. Is he going to get 5-6 years, or he's going to get 8 or 9 years? And are the Orioles going to be willing to pony up the dough? I'll tell you, 8-9 years, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that because then you're going to be paying a lot. Now, if you actually win a World Series or two, is it worth it to pay him $30 to $40 million a year when he's just not very good, or maybe he's just a middle of the road starter at that point? That remains to be seen. But something's got to happen. The Orioles are going to have to spend some money here to get a top of the line starting pitcher, unless they make a trade. We'll get into all of that here in just a moment on the Bat Around Today's show, brought to you by the latest edition of the Press Box print issue. We are in the final weeks of the current print issue of Press Box. On the cover, is it DeBose or DeBose?
It is DeBose. Brooks DeBose.
Okay. Brooks DeBose profiles the Baltimore-built duo of Julian Reese and Derek Queen as the former St. Francis teammates reunite in College Park with hopes of bringing the Terps back to prominence. Also inside, meet college basketball players from every program around the state. You can find that print issue of Press Box all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. All right, Griffin, you started to mention a little bit about how the Orioles are going to need to spend money. They've been linked to Nathan Eovaldi recently. That's a guy who I really want the Orioles to sign. But I want him to be they need 2 starting pitchers. I want an ace, and I want Nathan Eovaldi. All right, so he can't be the top guy. Baltimore Banner article written by Andy Kotska quoted a number of agents across baseball as saying, under the guise of anonymity, of course, that they don't know what the Orioles are going to do. The first quote in Andy's article came from Mike Elias. It says, when talking about how the Orioles have the wherewithal to spend a ton of money this offseason, Elias said, that doesn't mean that we are going to spend money indiscriminately this offseason come hell or high water. We're going to see good talent evaluation, good long-term investments for the team. We're trying to keep a healthy franchise for a really long time. Are you reading between the lines with that at all? Is that a situation where you're looking at it and he's saying, yeah, we have money to spend. We're just not going to throw it around. Is that basically his way of saying we're probably not going to be giving $200 million to Corbin Burns?
I don't think that means no, we're not signing Corbin Burns. I think it means that it's going to be.
That was just a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Certainly here type of situation.
Mm-hmm. I think it means he's going to continue operating, as they had before Rubenstein and this group came in. I think they're going to continue to make very, very calculated moves. They're gonna try it. They're gonna run. They're gonna run everything through their head multiple times. And what's the high end? What's the high end success of this specific move? What's the risk as well? Like what's the bottom end here? Corbin Burns doesn't pan out, which wouldn't make much sense. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball since he became a starter. I think it just means that they're going to be very calculated, and I think that that means spending $200 million on a pitcher. If that lines up with what they believe will be will lead to a World Series in Baltimore, then they're going to do it. And if they believe that they can get that it's going to be there's a different route that can get them to the World Series, then they're going to go that route as well. I don't think we need to be really reading too much in between the lines of that right now. And it wasn't, and that wasn't a lift-off statement either. So that's so I don't think there's reason to be bummed out about that. There's no reason for us to be heartbroken if they don't sign Corbin Burns. If they do sign Corbin Burns and no one else, I think they've been very smart with how they've done everything. I think they're gonna continue to do that, and it's nice that they're gonna have a little extra money this time to be smart. So sure. I think it's only a good thing.
Yeah, and look, they're going to go out and they're going to do something, and I think that the statement is very calculated by Mike Elias. Instead of saying it's liftoff, he put his foot in his mouth there. He put his foot in his mouth kind of when he traded away Trey Mancini and Jorge Lopez while the team was in the midst of playing their best baseball in 6 years. So I think that this is a situation where he's just kind of like, look, we're going to spend money, but I don't want to put the expectations that it come hell or high water, we're getting these two top of the line starting pitchers. We're signing Teoscar Hernandez. We're signing Clay Holmes and Tanner Scott, and we're going to be the best team in the American League. Because if they don't do that, you're only setting yourself up for failure. So it's a very calculated statement from him. Now, this article, though, was more so about what the Orioles will or will not be willing to do in the offseason. And there were, again, agents quoted under the guise of anonymity. And the first agent quoting the article says, if the analytics game is going to inform their decisions on money they spend, they probably are going to be in trouble. Because at some point, to get the guys who are dudes, and I love that because I always say that dude's a dude, you just got to effing outbid people. You got to go outside your comfort zone to get the top end free agent. See, that agent and the way that we're thinking about the Orioles this offseason, and the way that I've been thinking about the Orioles since the 2022 offseason, that's what you have to do. You have to say, screw analytics, screw this, screw that. Let's go get a guy who is just a good damn ball player and sign him to a big contract because we need these guys to help us take that next step forward. If you're going to get outbid for you cannot get outbid for Teoscar Hernandez. You cannot get outbid for either Max Fried or Corbin Burns. You can't say, they were linked to Yusei Kikuchi. They were linked to Blake Snell. Okay, they were in on them. Did they get outbid? Obviously, they got outbid. And how much did they get outbid by? Okay, what are your offers? Was your offer to Blake Snell, 5 years, $125 million? That's not remotely close to what he's going to get. Was your offer 5 for $150? Was your offer to Yusei Kikuchi, 3 years, $54 million, or 3 years, $60 million? He signed for 3 years, $63 million. How close was your offer? Are you actually in competitive waters, or are you just standing in the shallow end while the big boys swim the deep end? That's what I'm looking at with this team. And, there's another guy, and getting to that point, says in the article on the idea that they were linked to Yusei Kikuchi and Blake Snell, the agent says, it seems to me there's a lot of big market teams willing to spend, which is great for the players. It also seems to be that there's not a lot of elite talent available, right? All-star talent available. Whether it's via free agency or the trade market, I think because of that, you're going to see prices jacked up a little bit like you did with Snell. I'm not necessarily surprised at the 5 years. I would have thought 4. But I am surprised at the average annual value. and just doesn't think that the Orioles are going to be swimming in those waters. And then you look at at another agent who says he doesn't believe the Orioles can win a bidding war for guys expecting $200 million contracts and that they could go the trade route. He says, I think it's more likely they do that, meaning trade for Crochet, than signing a guy like Corbin Burns if his market goes to $200 million plus. I don't know if it will, but if it does, I don't see the Orioles being the winning bidder at that level. They do make a trade for a guy like Crochet. I see Coby Mayo as the headliner. So I guess the whole point of the article, the Orioles say they have money to spend, but how much are they really willing to spend? And are they going to go that route, or are they going to make a trade to get somebody like a Garrett Crochet? But also realizing that they have to spend elsewhere because they don't just need one pitcher. They need two starting pitchers. They need likely two back-end relievers and a right-handed hitting bat that you can play almost every day in the middle of their order.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think I'm gonna tend to agree with those agents as well. It's, you gotta go out and get your guy. I don't want to be the Toronto Blue Jays who are gonna be, all the reports are gonna say they're in on Juan Soto and then at the last minute it's gonna, it's obviously gonna be the Dodgers or the Yankees or whoever are gonna end up signing him or the Giants, whoever it ends up. Yeah, and then the Blue Jays are gonna panic and overpay somebody else. Like no offense, obviously I love Santander, but they're gonna overpay Anthony Santander, and that's what the Blue Jays are gonna do because they fell out of the Juan Soto sweepstakes. I don't want that to be the Orioles. I don't want them to have to overpay a guy. I want them to go get the guy that they want. If that's Corbin Burns, go freaking get him. If that's Teoscar Hernandez, go freaking get him and make sure that nobody else gets him. No, make sure he's not a Dodger. Make sure he's not a Yankee. And you may have to pay up you have to pay a little bit more of a tax because of that. But I think that's going to be worth it because he's a baseball player. He's a guy that you can trust for 6 straight months and not have to worry about it. So definitely, go in and get your guy. Man, it is tough to say. Do we expect the Orioles to do that? I think because of the way that David Rubenstein has talked about himself. He's here for he's racing to the finish line. He wants to win this thing. He wants to get a freaking win. He wants to win a World Series. I do think that they can be swimming in that 200. But that's probably the very top of where they can swim right now is about $200 million. And I'm not sure if they'll go, once they do get that one $200 million guy, I'm not so sure they'll be able to get a second or someone that's even half that value. But I think that would definitely put a charge into this fan base and it put a charge in the baseball team as well. I mean, showing that, hey, we will pay guys. We are trying to win. We are trying to win a World Series, and that'll put a charge into the city and the organization. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think the agents are right.
Yeah, I think that, what I do think they'll end up doing is I think that they're going to sign one top name on the free agent market. Whether that's a Corbin Burns, a Max Fried, or a Teoscar Hernandez, they're going to sign one of those guys. And then I do believe that they're going to make a trade for somebody. They've been heavily linked to Garrett Crochet and making that trade. You have a number of guys who are, major league ready, whether it's Heston Kjerstad, Coby Mayo, Jackson Holliday, Samuel Basallo. They can't all be here. So who are you going to trade? What are you going to do? And those are all prospects that could fetch you a Garrett Crochet. Now, I have my opinions on who they should be trading. I would, I don't know that I want to trade any of those guys,
right.
But maybe if you could trade Coby Mayo to get Garrett Crochet, but then see, there's reasons for and reasons against
Every
it.
Guy. Yeah.
And like Heston Kjerstad, if you don't keep him, who's playing right field for you? Especially if you don't sign Teoscar. If Coby Mayo, if you don't keep him, are we watching a platoon of Ryan O'Hearn and Ryan Mountcastle, and you're watching those guys hit 6 home runs combined the last 3 months of the season? If are you trading Jackson Holliday just to watch him play shortstop for the White Sox, hit 320 with 30 bombs every year? And how are you going to feel about that? And then Samuel Basallo, I've heard some people compare him to Juan Soto with where he can be offensively, and that I've heard that his defensive game has really taken a step forward. If you watch him go to the White Sox and become, a catching Juan Soto, how does that feel? You can't, operate on ifs and buts, but at the same time, you have to find starting pitching. If you're not going to go out and sign somebody for $200 million, maybe you do have to trade for a guy like Crochet and be willing to part with one or two of those prospects. I don't know. That's why Mike Elias runs a team and I don't.
Right. And if
Speaking of, go ahead.
If they were to make that trade for Crochet, that they would more or less have to sign him to an extension, right? Because that was the whole deal.
Yeah, he said
if
he's going to get traded, he wants to be signed to an extension. Although I do think he said that he would not pitch in October without an extension.
Okay.
So maybe it's a little bit different. In the off season.
Yeah, and it could be different. Like Matthew Judon got traded to the Falcons right before the season started, and then he said he wouldn't play without a contract. Then he ended up playing without a contract without an extension with the Falcons. So it could be different.
Like Garrett Crochet has a lot of leverage here. Like you're not going to pitch, and then you're not going to you still have arbitration years to go through.
Yeah.
So it's not like he has a ton of leverage. Although I think he only has like 2 arbitration years left, but. I don't know. I do foresee the Orioles signing somebody. I just don't know who it's going to be. Just a bit outside says, I've already resigned myself to the fact that Elias isn't going to sign anyone significant this offseason. I just don't want to be disappointed. He goes on to say, once a cheapskate, always a cheapskate.
So
I look at that and I say, okay, yeah, he hasn't spent money to date, but look at how handcuffed he was by John Angelos. And David Rubenstein's already done things that John Angelos would never do, like paying to bring that wall back in after the Maryland Stadium Authority footed the bill the first time around. David Rubenstein's gone out, and the Orioles are paying for the wall renovations. So for me, I can't say that Elias wants a cheapskate, always a cheapskate, because he didn't have the wherewithal to be able to do that.
Choice.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess to the point where he saw, oh my gosh, we won 101 games without literally spending any money. So maybe he thinks he can, why would he want to challenge himself to do that? Now see how many more games over 100 you can win when you do have a payroll that is, that's 5 times more than what it was in 2023. I had a thought, Paul, and I lost it. I forget what I was going to say.
That's all right. And you said that we won over 101 games, and why not try to win more than that? The Orioles were on pace to win 108 games this past season. Through the middle of June, and then you just watch pitchers drop like flies after that. I mean, John Means, Kyle Bradish, Tyler Wells, Danny Coulombe, Jacob Webb, all of these guys just dropped with elbow injuries, and so you find yourself in a situation where now you're struggling. Maybe the offense puts too much of the onus on themselves because they don't have the starting pitching that they had before. I mean, the Orioles were their ERA was 2.5 through the middle of June through that Phillies series, and then it ballooned to the bullpen ERA alone ballooned to 4.25 after that, and they were one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. So I think that you look at this team and you say, they have an opportunity to really right the ship by getting some of this pitching back. They're going to get Felix Bautista back, and they know that if they add a Teoscar Hernandez and a Max Fried and a Nathan Eovaldi, that they're likely in a situation where they're the team to beat in the American League. And if you have to spend, what are you going to spend average annual value between those 3 guys? 25 to 30 million for Fried, right. Probably 15 to 18 million for Eovaldi, and then probably 20 million a year, 20 to 25 million a year for Teoscar Hernandez. You're looking at a situation where you're spending maybe 70, 75 million this offseason. Adding that to a payroll where it's only at 90 million now, you're still not flirting with the teams at the top right there. I look at it and I say it's a no-brainer to add those guys. And I think that if I see that, Mike Elias sees that too.
And I mean, and the other thing is, where were we in February of this year? No one did anyone see a Corbin Burns trade coming? No. And that's the thing, is that he is always going to be working. He's going to be figuring out, what that trade is that no one else sees coming. He's going to be trying. So it is going to be disappointing if we get through the next week and a half. Everyone leaves Dallas, and the Orioles do not have, they have not spent, $200 million on a baseball player. it's going to be disappointing, especially because of what we think, what our minds are kind of thinking that this organization is capable of financially. So it's going to be disappointing, but also it is going to be also have to stay patient, because who knows? It's we talked about the Mariners at the top of the show, a team that is so strapped for that is just searching everywhere for any little bit of what did they give Victor Robles an extension? They're looking for any sort of offensive firepower. And so and they have so much pitching. So who I'm not probably not George Kirby, but like Luis Castillo or even I'm not sure how they feel about a Brian Wu. I'm not sure how much they I'm sure they love Brian Wu, but if it means that they can get a big bat like Heston Kjerstad, like what's who knows if that could potentially be what's on the horizon in January or something, So I think patience also needs to be part of it.
And we enter the winter meetings every year, and you get super excited because it's the winter meetings, and these are when all these blockbuster deals happen, right? And the Orioles oftentimes, the Orioles had the largest deal of the winter meetings last year when they signed Craig Kimbrell for $13 million with a $12 million option, right? And we saw how that turned out. So winning the winter meetings doesn't necessarily mean, or losing the winter meetings, put it that way, by not making a big acquisition or a big trade, a big signing at the winter meetings doesn't mean that your off season was a failure. Maybe they lay the groundwork for a ton of stuff that happens after the holidays. It's going to be disappointing to all of us if they leave the winter meetings with nothing. And we know that. That's just the nature of the business. We're going to be disappointed. But like you said, in February, within a week of each other, we saw that the Orioles traded for Corbin Burns and that they sold the team, right? Yeah. So, we saw that all happen in February. Big things happen all the way up to and into spring training.
Like Snell didn't sign until March, right? Like that was,
Yeah. Jordan Montgomery didn't sign until March. JD Martinez didn't sign until May, So this stuff happens every year. So we shouldn't be surprised, even if we aren't happy with what happens in the immediate, because we want that instant gratification. Now, people in the chat going back and forth about this as well. PigTownSports again, Zach Moore. If they didn't spend on a big guy but still bolstered the pen, I'd be okay, because trades can still make the team better. To which just a bit outside struck back. So deplete the farm and major league roster instead of just spending money. Not sure I like that approach. What's the point of having a farm system if one, you don't have enough room on your roster for all those guys to play, and two, you don't use that farm system to bolster your major league roster? I don't like trades of Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers, but if you're going to trade Kobe Mayo to get a Garrett Crochet, I'm okay with that.
I'm pretty sure every single Oriole fan would trade Joey Ortiz for Corbin Burns 11 times out of 10. Like that worked out perfectly. Obviously they didn't win a World Series, so I guess perfectly isn't the right word, but that worked out. That was exactly what they wanted. Yeah, and obviously Mike Elias now has shown that his scouting department, they know what they're doing. Like they have found guys. They obviously they've been able to hit. Well, hopefully it looks like they've been able to hit on their 1-1 picks in Adley and Jackson Holiday. Those should still work out. But they're able to find guys after that, Gunnar and Westberg, and they're able to find guys up and down. They don't have to have the 1-1 pick to find the best talent, some of the best talent in the MLB draft. So I think they definitely need to be using that. That is the strength. The farm is one of their strengths. They should use that to turn the Major League Baseball team into a strength as well.
Right. And the other thing is, you have a GM who has given you, for 3 years in a row, they were the number one farm system in all of baseball. They're not going to be ranked that highly now, just because guys graduated, guys got traded. But he built that farm system, and he wasn't always picking 1-1. Now granted, he was picking in the top 5, but there's still other guys in the system who have become big-time players, like Gunnar Henderson, who was the first pick of the second round. Kobe Mayo is one of the Orioles' top prospects. He was a 4th-round pick. So they're still able to build this farm system, and just because you traded these guys doesn't mean you can't rebuild it. And Zach Moore, he says the farm is so deep it wouldn't hurt that much to acquire some solid talent. They have about 9 outfielders who are 1 to 2 years away. Too many guys, too little positions. And then just a bit outside, but any potential trade partner has to want those guys. That's a fair point. Any potential trade partner has to want those guys, but you could say that about anybody. You know what I mean? The way that we value Kobe Mayo might not be the same way that the White Sox evaluate Kobe Mayo or Heston Kjerstad or, it's some of these guys like Jackson Holliday. It's hard not to evaluate them at a high level. But, we might think that Connor Norby is a guy that I think he's a guy who can hit 280 with 20 to 25 home runs every year at the big league level.
Mhm.
But maybe the Orioles look at him and they said, this is a guy whose ceiling is 260 with 15 bombs, and they felt like that was a good guy to trade to get a left-handed starting pitcher under team control.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is that just of how the injuries did play out. Like the next day, Jordan Westburg gets hit on the hand, and he doesn't play the rest of the year, or for basically the rest of the year. I mean, who would have known that a month later, Emmanuel Herrera was going to be your best one of your best offensive players, starting third base every single night. Like that was, the injuries quickly piled up right after that trade. It still doesn't excuse the Trevor Rogers Norby Stowers trade, because right now it does look like an F grade if you had to grade it, but there's a lot of time left in the careers of all three of those guys. So
yeah, and they said that Trevor Rogers has been doing a different workout program, really simplified his delivery, and they expect him to hit the ground running hopefully in spring training. We'll see. I just, God, if the Orioles' approach to this offseason is one starting pitcher and hope that Trevor Rogers is who we thought he was when we traded for him, I'm going to be very upset with that.
I agree.
Today, brought to you by County Sports Zone. Find every score from every high school sporting event all year long at countysports.zone. Proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Orioles, Griffin, have a huge need for a right-handed hitting outfielder. I'm going back and forth on this because obviously we want Teoscar Hernandez. He's the big name out there. And I'm under the belief that Anthony Santander will not be back. I think that, some team, whether it's the Nationals or the Blue Jays or the Yankees or the Guardians or the Marlins, some team's going to give him a contract that's going to be north of 4 years and $20 million a year. Somebody's going to give him that contract, and as much as I like Anthony Santander, I don't think he should be part of this team because Elias will bat him third or fourth. And he's going to hit 240 at tops with 30 home runs, but he's going to strike out a ton. He doesn't hit well with runners in scoring position, doesn't hit well with runners on base, became homer happy last year, in my opinion, especially down the stretch. And he doesn't hit in April, May, or September. So you're paying a guy to hit for you for 3 months. You need that guy. April and the beginning of May, you can kind of, you can accept that at the beginning of the year. You can't accept that in September. You need a guy who's going to be big for you down the stretch. So Andy Kotzka, he wrote that article for the Baltimore Banner. He noted how Elias acknowledged their outfield is lefty heavy, and they'll be seeking right-handed hitters to balance it out. Teoscar is the biggest want. Can the Orioles outbid the competition? Kotzka also listed Jurickson Profar, Randall Grichuk, and Tyler O'Neill as some of the names available. If we're operating under the idea that the Orioles probably will be outbid for Teoscar Hernandez, and I hope that they're not, but I think that until they prove that they're going to do that, we have to believe everything we've seen to this point. You look at these guys, Jurickson Profar. Now, this past season, Griffin, he slashed 280, 380, 459, 839 is a breakout season in his age 31 season, 24 homers, 29 doubles. And he drove an 85. But even after a big year like that for Profar, again, in his age 31 season, his slash line for his career is a very modest 245, 331, 395, 726. Then you look at Randall Grichuk. He's posted some solid numbers in his career, but he's 33 years old. Posted his 2024 slash line of 291, 348, 528, 875 in a platoon role, though he did mash against lefties in his career and in 2024 when he hit 319 with a 916 OPS against lefties. Then you look at Tyler O'Neill. Breakout 2021 season, he was in the MVP race. He finished 8th, but he had a higher WAR than Bryce Harper, who won the MVP award. He had 6.1 WAR. He hit 34 homers, a 912 OPS. The last 3 seasons, O'Neill's WAR is just 4.1. He's averaged just over 90 games a year, and he's hit 234 the last 3 years combined. But again, in his career against lefties, a 923 OPS. And last season, he slashed 313, 430, 750, 1180 with 16 of his 31 home runs against left-handed pitching. So in my mind, I hate platoons. I want somebody who's going to come in, hit from the right side, hit in the middle of the order, and play every single day. But we also have to know that the Orioles operate analytically, right? And who Brandon Hyde is as a manager, he likes matching up. He has a platoon at first base. He has a platoon in left field. He has a platoon at second base and third base. The backup catcher plays 90-plus games every year. So you look at that and you say, let's be realistic about this. They're probably going to bring in a guy who's really good against lefties. And that screams Randall Grichuk or Tyler O'Neill or potentially Jerickson Profar. Your thoughts on all three of those guys, and should we be expecting somebody who's going to be more of that platoon bat rather than somebody a player?
I think probably it is a pretty fair expectation to expect it to be to be more of a platoon. So does Profar then make some sense just simply because he's right-handed and you could probably get him. He's not going to be probably as expensive, although he did obviously make himself a lot of money this season. So who knows? Profar, I'm not looking at it right now, looking at it through the lens of is this an everyday left fielder or right fielder or whatever corner, is this an everyday corner outfielder? I don't think Profar is the guy just because of we do have the rest of his career to look at, and So he's in a batting in a lineup with Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis. He ends up having the best year of his career. So he'll obviously be in a lineup with Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman, who we assume who we assume can get back to being one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. So that can obviously help him. I don't know. Profar is still one that I think of those guys that you rattled off there, I think is probably at the bottom right now for me personally, just because of the body of work is there. Randall Grichuk's interesting. He's not going to be the top target, obviously, or shouldn't be the top target, obviously. But because I feel like he has always just played the Orioles really well. Whenever he was in Toronto, even when he was with the Diamondbacks and they came here for 3 games, it felt like he was just hitting the ball hard and he was always a tough out. So he's an interesting one. I wouldn't be upset at Randall Grichuk, especially if we look around and the rest of the league is giving boatloads of money to these right-handed hitting outfielders, and it's just like, I don't want the Orioles, I don't want the Orioles spending that much money on a right-handed 30-plus-year-old outfielder. So Teoscar Hernandez is going to be at the top of the list. Obviously, Tyler O'Neill definitely excites me. I think Tyler O'Neill, I would be pretty happy if Teoscar Hernandez doesn't happen. I would be pretty happy if they landed Tyler O'Neill. It's not like he's a butcher in the outfield. And as reading off those numbers, he was the best hitting guy off of left-handed pitching, right? With that you read off there. I think Tyler O'Neill would be a great fit. Moving the wall in is going to help. I think that we do have to still have somewhat tampered expectations. I'm not sure what the new wall is going to look like, but still have somewhat tampered expectations. I don't think any right-handed hitter is going to come in to Camden Yards and have the best offensive year of their career, or at least best power offensive career of their career, even with the wall moving halfway back in. But Tyler O'Neill certainly excites me. I think he would be top 1A. He might even be like 1A, 1B with Teoscar Hernandez. I think they need to come away with one of those two guys. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and that wall, they're moving it anywhere from 9 to 20 feet. It's still going to be 333 down the line. It's always going to be that way. Mm-hmm. They're moving it in anywhere from 9 to 20 feet, and they're lowering it. So it was 13 feet high. I think I heard.
How taller than that?
In the big part, and now it's being down is 6'11" in some spots, and no higher than 9 feet in other spots. And so I think that's gonna, you're moving it in, but you're also lowering it, which is going to give you more home runs. A guy like Tyler O'Neill, Brian Mountcastle was probably doing, backflips when he heard the news. Any guy you bring in has got to be a righty, and they're going to, they have to be able to hit the ball out of the ballpark. If you're talking about a platoon, if you've got against righties, Heston Kjerstad, Cedric Mullins, and Colton Cowser playing in the outfield against lefties, it's Randall Grichuk or Tyler O'Neill in left field, Cowser in center, and Kjerstad in right. I think that you're looking at a situation where, I can get on board with signing Grichuk or O'Neill if that's what they're going to do against lefties. And that's what they've done in their entire career against lefties. They hit far better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. So that's something that can excite me moving forward. Teoscar Hernandez, I would love to have him. He did strike out 188 times last year. But this is a guy who's hit 25 to 35 home runs every year of his not every year, but more often than not. over the last 6-7 seasons. So that's who I ultimately want. But if they come away with Tyler O'Neill, you're not going to see me be pissed off about it.
No, yeah, I agree. And the Orioles, aren't going to be afraid. I don't think they're afraid of guys that strike out a ton either. Wasn't that Vance Honeycutt had a very high swing and miss rate, I believe. So I don't think they're worried about the guys that strike out a bunch. They can help that. Yeah,
it's such an exciting player to think about him with his athleticism, his defensive metrics, the power that he brings. That's the guy who you could see in Baltimore playing left field next to Ricky Bradfield in center field. That's a guy who you can get excited about.
I mean, then you're gonna be surprised when any ball hits the grass in the outfield.
Yeah, for sure. All right, today's show brought to you by Project Game Day. Press Box's Project Game Day is back for another season. You can join Glenn Clark, Rita Hubbard, and Super Bowl 35 champion Femi Ayambadejo after every Ravens game this year as they break down what happened and why and what we learned in each game. You can find the show immediately following Ravens Eagles tomorrow at PressBoxOnline.com/gameday. That's Pressbox's Project Game Day every Ravens game day all season long.
Yeah, so me Griffin, too. I will be there. I will be there too. I'm on those Project Game Days too. Every Ravens post game. I don't know why my name's not on the marquee yet, but yeah, I'll be there too. So you should.
Griffin Bass, Griffin, you are everywhere, man. I hear you on Glenn Clark Radio. I hear you on 105.7. I hear now you're on Project Game Day. Big career ahead for you, man. I feel like you're definitely doing a lot, doing the most right now. We still got a little bit to go, man. You good to hang out for a little bit?
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, college football doesn't start until 12, so come on.
All right, awesome. So the Orioles, we know that they didn't pick up the option on Danny Coulombe, the $4.4 million option, making him a free agent. They non-tendered Jacob Webb, making him a free agent. So they have a couple spots that they've got to fill in that bullpen. I have here listed, Griffin, the top 5 relief pitchers out there. You've got Tanner Scott, Clay Holmes, Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez, Kenley Jansen. Let's not spend an hour on each one of these guys. We'll try and go through this quickly. Tanner Scott, 22 saves, a 1.75 ERA, 113 WHIP, 84 strikeouts in 72 innings pitched, but also 36 walks in 72 innings pitched. That's over 72 games. So you're looking at, he walks 70. How does that correlate? That's 4.5 walks per 9. Essentially. Now that dropped down. He was up over 6 with the Marlins. He went to the Padres and dropped that number again down more than 2 walks per 9. As soon as he got to the Padres, he had 2.1 walks per 9 in 2023 when he really broke out for the Marlins. Tanner Scott, former Oriole, had control issues, but one of the most dominant closers in baseball the last couple seasons. Is he a guy that the Orioles should be targeting, despite the fact that they have 4 lefties in their bullpen already?
I mean, yeah, he's a good pitcher. So yes, I think he should certainly be on their radar. So I don't think it's ever going to be bad. Adding pitching. The Dodgers clearly are learning that. That's why they're going to sign Blake Snell. They're probably going to sign another top of the end, another at least one. At minimum, mid rotation guy. So yeah, I think they should be. So the lefties now are Perez. It was Perez, Soto, and who are the other two that we got right now? Perez, Soto.
You've got Perez, Soto, Ciano, Perez. Oh, you already said that. Ciano, Perez, Soto. Who are the other guys? They have a couple of lefties. Oh, you're looking at Cade Pope, which is probably going to start unless you don't sign anybody, you're probably going to start the year either at AAA or in your bullpen. Let's take a look.
We'll see who gets there faster. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, dude. I should have known. I should have known who is on there, because I can tell you that they have more than just those 2, but I can't really remember.
Keegan Aiken. Okay. So Keegan Aiken.
It's Keegan Aiken. You've got Aiken. You've got Perez, and you've got Soto, and then you potentially have Cade Povich, right? So then, are you going to add Tanner Scott? Now, look, you're not going to not add Tanner Scott if he wants to sign. Now, here's the thing: because Tanner Scott, one, he's going to want a big payday. It might be his only opportunity to get a big payday. 2, 100%. Does he want to come here knowing that eventually that closing job is Felix Bautista? Bautista, you expect that he's going to be full go in spring training. He's going to be a year and a half removed from Tommy John surgery, which is ideal when the guy's getting back on the mound again. after Tommy John surgery, a year and a half. He hasn't been rushed. But you don't know that he's going to hit the ground running because most people don't. It usually takes you a little bit of time to bounce back from that surgery. So maybe he's not your closer to start. He's just part of your bullpen. Does Tanner Scott sign in a place like Baltimore if he's not guaranteed to be the closer in the future? Or is it as long as you pay me what I think I'm worth, I don't care when I pitch?
I think I would lean towards the latter. I think money's going to talk with a lot of these guys, and if he's going to be on a team that's going to be able to compete for the World Series, I think that also I don't think that should go underrated at all. Being able to compete for a championship is definitely something that matters to these guys. Scott was because once he was traded to San Diego, he wasn't really the full-time closer. They were because Roberto Suarez was there. So I don't think he would have. Obviously, it's not like I've talked to Tanner Scott, but it doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be pissed off that he's not the ninth inning guy, especially when Felix Bautista, who was the best closer in baseball the last time he was on the mound, I don't think he's going to be too upset with that. And and it's very likely that he could surpass Junior Cano and be that eighth inning guy. And obviously Baltimore loves our reliever entrances. So if he picks a great song and he becomes the eighth inning guy, people are going to go nuts for him whenever he comes into the game. And I think he can be happy. Should he be the top target? It's hard to say no. It's hard to say no just because he is the as you read it off, he is the number one reliever that's on the market right now. I don't think it's going to be something I expect though. It's not something I expect. Like it would be exciting. But I don't think it's gonna. I don't expect it unless the market for relief pitchers is really low this winter for whatever reason.
I'd imagine that he's going to sign with a team that has a desperate need for a closer. The Yankees are going to be in the running for that. Who's closing games for the Dodgers? Is it Will Smith?
What?
No, Will Smith.
Who they're planning on? Let's see.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but some team's going to be out there that's going to need a closer. I think could potentially outbid the Orioles for his services.
They had Daniel Hudson closing games at one point last year.
Yeah. The Marlins, he had a 1.18 ERA in 44 games with 18 saves, but a 5.3 walks per nine. With the Padres, 4 saves in 28 games.
Is Kopech the guy for the Dodgers right now, I guess?
Yeah, the former starter. That's
Evan Phillips was closing games at one point, but he kind of lost that job. Yeah.
But yeah, then with the Padres, Tanner Scott, 2.73 ERA in 28 games, but his walks went from 5.3 per nine to 3.1 per nine. I don't think that the Orioles have a chance at Tanner Scott. I think somebody else is going to, because we're talking about all these guys that get to the top of the market. The Orioles aren't going to win on all of them, if any of them. And so I think Tanner Scott's probably going to go to a team like the Yankees. I would not be surprised. You look at Clay Holmes, 30 saves, 3.14 ERA, 130 WHIP, 68 Ks to 22 walks in 63 innings over 67 games. Was an all-star and kind of went the route of Craig Kimbrell. The ERA wasn't nearly as bad as Kimbrell the second half, but he blew a lot of saves. I think he led the American League in blown saves in 2024. You're bringing Clay Holmes in. It's not to be your closer. It's to be your setup guy. I'm surprised the Yankees didn't hold on to him, but then again, playing in New York and that team, those fans really soured on Clay Holmes the second half of the year. I think Clay Holmes could be a guy who would be a reasonable get for the Orioles. I don't know, man. If they sign any of these guys, Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez, Kenley Jansen. I do not want Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen can kick rocks. That guy.
Yeah, we did that last year. I don't think.
Yeah, Kenley Jansen can stay away, but a guy like Carlos Estevez, a guy like Jeff Hoffman, a guy like Clay Holmes, those guys could be had and really revamp your bullpen. The Orioles, it could be a couple of guys that we aren't even talking about, but the Orioles really need to fill those roles of Jacob Webb and Danny Coulombe. We talked about it last week with Zach on this show. Danny Coulombe, he's projected to be worth about $2.3 million this year, and so I think that the Orioles were like, look, we're not going to pick up your option. Go test the free agent market. If you can get that, cool. If not, come back and we'll work something out with you.
Right.
Because he's also 35 years old.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I mean, he's coming off of it was just an elbow chip surgery. I forget what that surgery is called, but I mean,
bone spurs. Yeah.
right. Yeah, bone spurs. I assume that they just must not have liked the medicals with Danny Coulombe, right? Like that has to be it. Like multiple elbow procedures. And a guy at his age, yeah, they didn't. They hopefully it is something they could revisit if he's going to hit the market here, and if he deserves to make to make a good contract. So I hope someone does pay him. But if it doesn't work out, if he's not getting the numbers that he likes, I would absolutely love to have Danny Coulombe back. There's really not a whole lot to dislike about him. I assume the Orioles, Mike Elias had good reason for not bringing him, not bringing him back in. And I hope it's something that could be salvageable and potentially a reunion, because he was a big part of the Orioles' success in the last two seasons. So
one of the best left-handed relievers in the American League the last 2 years.
Yeah.
He got hurt. He's getting older. He does have a big injury history over the course of his career. And so that's something to be thought about. The velocity's been ticking down over the last couple of years, and ticked down even when he got back from the IL, even though he didn't allow a runner. He didn't allow a run to score after he came back off the IL. Be interesting to see if Danny Coulombe lasts on someplace else, or if he comes back and the Orioles sign him for maybe $2.5 to $3 million. We'll see how that goes. Number of guys that could be had here. If they sign one of these guys, I feel like.
Yeah, Clay Holmes I would not be upset with Clay Holmes whatsoever. I mean, he deserved to be on the All-Star team. Obviously it did kind of get derailed. His second half got derailed, but he still finished with really solid numbers. Like he's a good pitcher. He's been a good pitcher. Like he has a track record of being a very good relief pitcher. So I would definitely be happy with entertaining the idea of Clay Holmes.
And maybe
he's going to be more of that top of the reliever market. So it's not going to be something that I really expect, but I would definitely, there's a lot more things to be upset about than adding Clay Holmes to a bullpen.
And maybe if he's not closing games in New York, if he's the setup guy for the Baltimore Orioles, he has a little bit better of a season. Then Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez, those are two guys who pitched for the Phillies last year. Carlos Estevez came over from the Angels at the trade deadline. Both pitched very, very well. Both had sub-1 whips, sub-2.5 ERAs. They combined for 36 saves last year between the two of them. I don't know. I'm not going to lie and say I know a lot about these guys. I know Carlos Estevez is a top-of-the-line closer, one of the better closers in baseball. The Orioles bring in any of these guys except for Kenley Jansen. I'm going to be happy that they brought in somebody who's going to be better than what they're giving up in Jacob Webb and Danny Coulombe. Yeah, as long as they don't take a step back or bring in somebody with no experience to fill those roles. I don't want this to have been just a salary dump by not retaining both Webb and Coulombe. So I have to see that they did that so they could get better. And if that's the case, then we're good. But we have to see that. And again, on November 30th, before we even hit the winter meetings, I'm not in panic mode about the Orioles bullpen.
Yeah, And Jacob Webb was always found money anyway. Like this was a guy that, like, a waiver claim that ended up being a big part of the last 2 months of that 2023 season. And he was good again last year, but he did miss a lot of time. He had a lot of injury issues. So I think he was always found money. I think his time as an Oriole should be thought of as positively, and it's not a guy that you want to build a bullpen around anyway. So
for sure. Last year I was talking about Jacob Webb and said, do not bring this guy back, because of how bad he was in September and in the postseason. And then this year we're like, oh my God, how are the Orioles going to replace Jacob Webb? It's literally a year-to-year, day-to-day thing with professional sports, especially Major League Baseball.
There's a reason these guys hit waivers.
For sure. Today's show brought to you by Hartford Holiday. Visit Hartford County this holiday season for a brand new event. You'll feel like you stepped into a holiday movie. Hartford Holidays is overflowing with the spirit of the holiday season, and you'll be amazed by the jaw-dropping light displays, thrilled by a visit to Santa's workshop, and have the holiday time of your life with sleigh rides, a special vendor village, s'mores making stations, and so much more. It's a holiday light experience new at Ripken Stadium Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays beginning December 6th and going through December 22nd. For ticket information, head to visithartford.com for more. All right, Griffin. The one guy that we've got to talk about before we get to some viewer interaction is Juan Soto. I have been a big believer that if the Orioles really want to prove that they're trying to win and that they're willing to spend some money, go sign Juan Soto. Taking a step back from that because, one, it's just not going to happen. Two, they're not going to – like he's going to get $600, $700 million on the free agent.
What, the Orioles can't do that?
Dude, I think that they can. If you're paying him $50 million a year,
I agree.
You can do that. You can afford to do it, But your owner spent $27 million on the Magna Carta. Michael Bloomberg and Michael Arrighetti are worth a combined $114 billion between the three of them. You can afford to do it. It's just, will they? And no, they won't. Where does Juan Soto end up? A lot of people thought the Dodgers. A lot of people thought the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, the Braves, the Blue Jays. In your opinion, where does Juan Soto end up?
Right now, I think it's going to be one of three places. I think he's going to end up back with the Yankees. I think the Dodgers obviously are up there, and then I think the San Francisco Giants. Even though that I guess there was no truth to them actually signing Aaron Judge when what was that Heyman that sent out that report last year that the Giants signed Aaron Judge. But I feel like the Giants they just seem
Arson Judge.
Yeah, Arson. They seem like they just seem like that dark horse, and that's the one that I think sticks out most. I don't think the Blue Jays have any chance. My gut tells me he ends up back in New York. That's what my gut tells me. I think he was the reason that they made it to the World Series. I think they're not spending as much as the Dodgers have of recent, but they are still the New York Yankees. And I think they know that he is a franchise player, and they can obviously afford to give him whatever they want. So I think my gut says the New York Yankees is where Juan Soto is.
So
I'd love it if you ended up in the NL West.
The Giants are a sneaky place. They're a sneaky, and honestly, the beginning of the offseason, I forgot about the Giants, but at the beginning of the offseason, I thought that was a great fit. And forgot about the Giants because you don't really hear about them for his services over the last month or so. And I look at him as probably wanting to play on the East Coast, probably wanting to be in the spotlight. Now, the Mets owner, Steve Cohen, is that his name?
Yes.
He came out and he basically said, we will outbid anybody for Juan Soto's services. So if he
I should add them. The Mets should certainly a viable landing spot.
If he goes to the Yankees, it's because he wants to play for the Yankees. Because I think the Mets will outbid them. But look, the Yankees, they're not going to win the division without him next year. They're not going to do it. They won the American League's the award for the American League's best offensive team. And it's because they have Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. You take those two guys. You take your main 3-4 hitters out of any lineup. You're not the same, but it was really two guys that won that award for the Yankees last year. You replace them with Anthony Santander and Cedric Mullins. They're not winning that award. You know what I mean? I think that the Yankees, if they want to stay at the top of the AL East, if they want to get back to a World Series, they have to re-sign Soto. And I just don't know that it's going to be enough. I think that the Mets are going to outbid everybody, and I think that the Mets ultimately end up with Juan Soto, and then it's just going to make that Mets-Yankees rivalry that much stronger. And Cohen, he took like a year or so off from spending after the Mets won over 100 games in 2022, and then they came out in 23 and they kind of crapped the bed, and he was like he trades away Verlander, trades away Scherzer. And he's like, we're gonna start this thing over again with the idea that we're gonna spend for 2025. He's ready to go out there and spend money, and I think Soto is, options 1, 2, and 3 for Cohen with the Mets. And I think that ultimately, if he wants to play in New York, it's going to end up being with the New York Mets. But I do think the Yankees are second, and the Giants are a really good dark horse team for his services because they have the money to spend and they need somebody for that lineup because their lineup is not good.
Yeah, you've talked me. Yeah, you've talked me into the Mets. The Yankees are still going to be my one. I think there is no way. I think the Yankees know that they are nothing. I mean, they're not nothing. They're going to be a good baseball team, but they are not a World Series. They're not a World Series team if they don't have Juan Soto, and I think that they're going to recognize that, and I do think they're going to find a way to make sure he sticks around in the Bronx and not the Queens. So.
All right, so let's get to some viewer interaction here. And for the record, Griffin says Yankees. I say Mets are the for who's going to get Juan Soto. Not going to be the Orioles, but we've known that since day. So Randall, Randall Fracase, he says O's won't make the playoffs by bringing in retread players. I agree. The retread players that you're talking of, probably like Randall Grichuk, or.
I mean, Aaron Hicks was a big part of the 2023 team. Like, I don't know if I don't know if I agree 100%. Like, the Orioles are going to, like, they can be using analytics works. Like, they were one of the best pinch hitting teams in baseball last year. As much as we gargled about everything, they were still one of the best pinch hitting teams in baseball last year. Like, they're going to find a way to be competitive at a bare minimum with whatever they have, because they're a smart franchise. Like, they are. What Michael Elias is doing is good. And Brandon Hyde and Michael Elias, as much as you can disagree with the moves they've made, they're smart people. They're smart baseball people.
Yeah, they're going to sign somebody that we don't like, who's going to have some kind of role on this team. It happens every year, and it's going to happen again this year. It's going to be somebody that we're like, what the hell? And they're going to get some playing time, at least at the beginning of the season. Just a bit outside says, sign Teo, Burns, Evaldi, and Holmes. Maybe trade for another starter. Call it an off-season. That would be a great off-season. I just don't think it's in the cards for all of those guys. But maybe. And he says, if not Burns, then Fried. Yeah, I mean, like, look, that would be my perfect offseason. I think that's what the Orioles should be aiming to do. I don't know that they're going to be able to get – like, I think that Burns or Fried and Evaldi is a realistic thing for this team. Those two guys and Teoscar Hernandez and Clay Holmes, I don't think it's realistic. I think it should be, but I just don't think that it is.
I also don't think it's realistic. I think it should be. They should, they need to walk out of this winter with one of Burns, Fried, or Crochet. I think that should be their top three.
Absolutely. Zach said, PigTownSports. Damn, Paul, out on your own self on the age. Yeah, I have no problem telling people that I'm 40, mainly because of the fact that I don't look 40.
Yeah, you look good, man.
Yeah, thank you. So, like, yeah, I'm 40, but like 40 is what, like the new 30? So I'm 30. Right? Randall says Evaldi is not the answer at number 3 at best. O should sign Fried and Buehler. I'm not saying that I want Evaldi as the main guy. I think the Orioles need 2 starting pitchers, and if you get me Max Fried and Nathan Evaldi, then I'm over the moon. You know what I mean? I'm over the moon excited about this offseason if you're able to get those guys. I think Evaldi is a guy. I've wanted him on the Orioles the last 2 seasons, and I would love to see him pitching in Baltimore this year. I do like the idea of Walker Buehler. He's been hurt a lot, but he was really good before he got hurt, and then he was really good in the postseason this year. So if you bring in Walker Buehler, that could be a sneaky signing where you don't have to give him $25 million. You could probably get him for $15 to $20 million average annual value, and I think that Walker Buehler eventually gets to the top of your rotation.
I agree too. That's why I do like. I'm very interested in Walker Buehler, mainly because I don't think he's going to demand as much as a lot of these other front end starters are, and I think Buehler has the chance to be a front end starter. So that's why I would not be disappointed in the slightest if they walked away with Walker Buehler. It would be Walker Buehler and that needs to be said though as well.
Yeah. At PigTownSports, the 96-97 year, I was at all the games. It was so fun as a young kid, but Griffey walked by me without signing an autograph, broke my heart. I was at the playoffs in both 96 and 97. Went to a lot of games as a kid. My dad, back when, pharmaceutical reps could bribe doctors. Not that my dad, they would give my dad free tickets for like luxury boxes and stuff like that. That didn't make, he would like take the tickets. He's like, look, that doesn't mean I'm going to use your product. But that was back when they could do that. There's laws against that now. But we went to a lot of games in the 96 and 97 seasons. I went to a doubleheader. I'll never forget, July 13th, 1996. My uncle got me those tickets. for Christmas, and I was excited to watch Roberto Alomar play because I played second base at the time, and I was like super excited to watch Robbie Alomar play. Not thinking about the fact that I would go to like 10 games before that game in July. It ended up being a doubleheader against the Yankees. The Orioles got swept in that doubleheader to fall 8 games out of the division. We were surrounded by nothing but drunken Yankee fans for 8 hours that day. It was awful.
Hey,
it was
memory. Core
and
memory.
I'll tell you, Zach, if because that's who commented, Zach, if Griffey walked by me without signing an autograph, he is my favorite baseball player of all time. I would have been absolutely devastated. He was the first jersey I ever owned. I had a Mariners hat. I would like to think that there's no way I would have worn Mariners gear to an Orioles game, but maybe put that hat in my back pocket so when Griffey walks by, I put it on and have him sign my autograph. Because it's probably because he was in Baltimore. You were an Orioles fan. I have to believe that. All right. Just a bit outside. Not saying he's the answer, but supplemental. Talking about Evaldi. Yeah, he is. He's not the main answer. He's an answer for your 2 rotation holes. Let's see. PigTownSports, Zach Moore. It's been 25 years since the team has won back-to-back championships in baseball. He's absolutely right. There's been a lot of parity in baseball, and there's injuries. And baseball is the one game where, on any given night, like in the NFL, despite the fact that the Chiefs keep playing these terrible teams and almost losing and should lose those games, in the NFL, you're not going to see a team like the Chiefs go and play a team like the Panthers or the Raiders and lose all that often. You could do a 7-game series between a team like the Dodgers and a team like the Minnesota Twins, and the Twins could win a couple games in there. Just because you have the highest payroll. I mean, look, the Yankees spend more than anybody yearly, and that's what they got back to their first World Series in 15 years this past season. They haven't won one in 15, now going on 16 years. So a lot of parity in baseball, more so than just about any other sport, in my opinion. And I think that, that's why I wasn't too worried when the Dodgers signed Blake Snell, because the Orioles are going to go out and sign some starting pitching. Other teams are going to compete, and then you still have to throw the ball over the plate and get guys out in the postseason. So, thoughts, Griffin?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I know I was saying, that it's my point. I guess I was trying to make early on was that you're always going to have the same favorites coming into every single year because of the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox. They're going to spend the most money. They're going to spend the most money. They're going to have the best looking roster because they're going to have the best players. They're going to have the most expensive players on their team. The Orioles just aren't going to be that. They're going to have to find different ways to be competitive. They're going to have to find ways to, they're going to have the payroll should be a lot higher this season, but they're still going to be kind of operating on the margin somewhat because they're not going to be spending $700 million on a baseball player. And it goes back to from Moneyball. If we try to play like the Yankees and the Dodgers in here, constructing a team, we're going to lose. We're going to lose because it's different games. Oh, yeah, Moneyball's the best.
Randall says, O's are not winning a postseason spot or winning a postseason game with the current rotation. Well, yeah, I mean, your current rotation is Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, Dean Kramer, Albert Suarez, and Kate Povich. So, no, they're not going to do that. They're going to add at least one starting pitcher and more than likely 2 starting pitchers. I think that's their goal for this offseason. And, if they only add one, it's because they believe that Kate Povich is a guy who can take that next step forward. You look at his delivery compared to Max Fried, and you look at his stuff, and he's up there on that level. Like
that's why I love the Max Fried one is very intriguing, just because I feel like he could develop Kate Povich himself. Just because I know that Kate Povich, adores Max Fried and models his pitching lineup after Max Fried. Like I just feel like we could end up having 2 Max Frieds, which would be pretty cool.
It would be awesome. It would be awesome. Just a bit outside, rotation wasn't a problem last year. We couldn't exactly down the stretch. The Orioles just they stopped hitting the baseball, and you watch a guy like Gunnar Henderson really needs to take that next step forward. Yeah, he was an MVP. He was an MVP candidate all year this year. He got a few 3rd place votes, a bunch of 4th place votes. But you look at Gunnar Henderson, he failed in big spots down the stretch for the Orioles. Got the moment got too big for him. And, I remember Zach Moore at PigTownSports. I keep saying both names. I want people to know who he is, like if they don't recognize one name or the other.
They should know. They should know him by now.
Yeah, I remember him saying this past season that he thought that Henderson had a shoulder issue. And that's why, the swing looked long and a little bit slower the second half. Whether he did or not, and that was also the reason for some of the bad throws. Whether he did or not, I don't know. But Gunnar Henderson, whether he knows it or not, Gunnar Henderson is the face of this franchise, right? The unquestioned clubhouse leader is Adley Rutschman, but the face of this franchise is Gunnar Henderson. He's going to be a perennial MVP candidate. Every year he takes that next step forward. This is a year where you're going into your third full season, man. This is a year you take that step forward where you're that guy who other teams are saying, that's the guy you can't let beat you, and you let him beat you. That's who he has to be this year. He has to be the Orioles' Aaron Judge or Juan Soto. That's who he has to be this year.
Yeah.
It's time for him to be that guy. He's progressed each year.
I think he was. Yeah,
the first half he was.
Yeah, the first half he was. He was in the MVP conversation, and and a lot of it could have just been, did he start, pressing a little bit too much? He saw the guys around him weren't hitting, and he realized, I got to do more. And he's a young guy. He's younger than I am. He's a young guy, and I think he'll figure it out. Again, no doubt in my mind that Gunnar Henderson.
They're all young guys to me, there, Griffin. No, but you're absolutely right. I looked to that when the Orioles were out in LA playing the Dodgers, and he was on Mookie Betts' podcast,
right?
And he told Mookie, I still feel like I still feel the pressure to act like to prove that I belong here, to prove that I am who they think I am. And Mookie was like, dude,
you're
going to hit 40 homers. You already have. You're that guy. You need to be that guy because you are that guy. Play like that guy. And when I saw that, I was like, that's why he's struggling right now, is because he doesn't realize he's arrived. You've arrived, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Act like it, and maybe that sounds like I'm being hard on the Orioles' best player. No, it's like the potential that this guy has, this untapped, unlocked potential this guy has, he can hit 320 with 50 home runs if he wants to. He just has to believe that he's in the position to do that, and that he is that player, and he has nothing to prove to anybody. Whether he hits 270 with 32 home runs or 320 with 50 home runs, he has nothing to prove to anybody. He's already done it. He was an MVP candidate in his second full season. He got called up at 21 years old, and then he wins Rookie of the Year. Then he's MVP candidate. The next logical step is you're that dude. Be that dude, because we already know that you are. Randall says O's need to get 2 top starters, the bat, and 2 bullpen pieces, or go home, retreads, won't cut it this year. They're not going to get 2 top starters. Unless they surprise everybody and they sign a Max Fried and trade for a Garrett Crochet, they're not going to get 2 top starters. But I am totally okay with getting a top starter and, again, a Nathan Eovaldi.
Right.
Those are 2 guys that make your rotation one of the best, if not the best, in the American League. Like, you're right there.
And they're going to have Bradish coming back. I mean, it is like
Yeah, and Bradish is coming back. And then imagine you have, say you sign Eovaldi for 2 or 3 years. You sign a 6 or 7 year deal with Max Fried. Then you've got Fried, you've got Grayson, you've got Eovaldi, and then I'm talking about 2026, and Kyle Bradish, who's still under team control. And then Dean Kramer on top of that. I mean, your rotation is absolutely loaded.
I mean, they were loaded. They were loaded in May and June when Kyle Bradish and John Means were the very brief time when they were healthy. I mean, they were the best team in baseball for that.
Oh, they were the absolute best team in baseball.
Stretch. Yeah.
As soon as I said they were the best team in baseball, that's when their downward trend started. I blamed myself because I started talking. It was after they lost that game 14-11 to the Astros, but they were down by like 13 runs in the 7th inning, and they made it a game. They had the tying run at the plate. And I looked at that and I was like, this is the best team in baseball. And then they were like 7 games under 500 the rest of the way. Yeah. But that rotation, God, seeing that rotation of Burns, Bradish, Grayson, Means, and then and Dean Kramer for that little bit of time that they had it. God, it was incredible. It was like the best I felt about watching Orioles baseball since like '97. It was amazing. Just a bit outside, up to Rubenstein to put his money where his mouth is. Absolutely. And I feel like this is a guy who's going to do it. This is a guy who's going to do it. It's just a matter of do players want to come play in Baltimore? I don't know that it's going to be about money unless you're in a bidding war with a team that just has more money than you. But ultimately, what it comes down to is you can offer me that contract. Do I want to play in Baltimore? Randall, O's need to put up or shut up. Yeah. Just a bit outside. I'm so sick of Elias, to be honest. I'm teetering with him. He's checked every box to this point, but I think that if he doesn't do the things that he needs to do this season,
Yeah,
I'm probably good on him.
this is definitely a very important offseason for him. I mean, you can kind of they still got Burns last offseason, but you can kind of put that to the side a little bit. You had the ownership change. This is going to be a full offseason with under new ownership. This is going to be very interesting to see how the next couple of weeks, next 2 months play out, and we likely hopefully see a shift in the way that this organization operates.
And to that point, just a bit outside, he said this is the third richest ownership group. I'm going to look this up because I don't want to just put that out there if it's not correct. I'm going to see richest ownership groups in Major League Baseball. Let's see here. David Rubenstein is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's 10th on the list of richest owners in Major League Baseball. The other guys are number one, Steve Cohen with the Mets. He's worth $21.3 billion. I mean, Michael Bloomberg's is worth $107 billion on his own. He's worth 100, and he's a minority owner of the Orioles. So I believe it when they say that it's the third richest ownership group in all of Major League Baseball. And with that in mind, go spend the money. You've got the money to spend. Go spend it. Daniel Pitts says, I don't think the O's will spend $200 million on a player. I'll believe it when I see it. We have such PSD as Orioles fans. I mean, you go back to the mid-90s, 96, 97, 98, even 99. The Orioles were top 5 in payroll all of those years. And in 97 and 98, they had actually, I even think in 2000, before the fire sale at the deadline, you look at 97 and 98, they had the number 1 payroll in all of baseball under John Angelos. Then he got burned by Albert Bell, Scott Erickson. Then he goes out in 2004. Prior to 2004 season, he signs Palmeiro, Lopez, and Tejada. Spends all that money. He gives big extensions to Adam Jones, Nick Markakis, and Brian Roberts. Brian Roberts bit him in the ass because he gave him 10 years, $40 million. He played 217 games over 4 years. Markakis played a lot, but he wasn't the same player because of the injuries. The only contract and then he signs Chris Davis.
Yeah, Chris Davis, like that.
Arguably the worst everyday player in the history of Major League Baseball after he signed that contract. I mean, the only contract that was signed by an Orioles player.
I can't wait for the documentary about Chris Davis in like 10, 15 years.
Oh my God.
It's going to be.
But and he'll have to be like this big philanthropic guy who's doing so much after his playing career is over for it to be something they talk about, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But oh my gosh, what if I told you this guy hit 100 home runs over 2 seasons, and then he became the worst position player in the history of baseball?
He signed the biggest contract in franchise history. And then
we could do it. Griffin, that's how we make our millions. We could make this documentary.
I'm down. I guess we got to start now.
No. The only big contract that did not bite Angelos in the ass was Adam Jones. You look at Javi Lopez, he signed a big deal, but he was only here for 2 years. You look at Rafael Palmeiro, the second year of his contract, the steroid scandal. Then you look at Miguel Tejada, he was amazing while he was here, but then it turned out he was older than his actual stated age. Steroids surrounding him, and they had to get rid of him too because of the Mitchell report. The only contract.
But he won a home run derby. You could throw him out there.
And an All-Star Game MVP. He drove in 150 runs in 2004. But the only contract that never burned John Angelos was Adam Jones. That was the only one. So then his son, talk about Napoleon complex. Couldn't pass the bar. Wants to separate himself from his father, and the way that he did it was in all the worst ways. Nothing but negativity.
We're going to be the Tampa Bay Rays. That's how we separate
it. My priorities are getting concerts and entertainment acts into Camden Yards before winning. Winning was third on his list.
Yeah, but for the record, I think it's a good thing. I think having concerts in Camden Yards is good for the city and good for.
It is, but it shouldn't be the only top priority.
Yeah.
It should be their third priority, and the first priority should be winning. But yeah, the Orioles they could spend $200 million on a player. They have to prove it. And the only reason people think that they won't is because they never have. But it's a completely new ownership group for the first time since 1992. So let's give them a chance to see what they're going to do. Randall says Fried and Eovaldi would be a good move. I prefer Fried and Buehler. Well, yeah. Freedom Buehler. I mean, Buehler's younger and has that upside now than Eovaldi does.
Do you think they're going to be like similar age or similar pay range? Do you think that they're going to be similar cost?
Eovaldi and Buehler.
Yeah, do you think Eovaldi's going to be cheaper? Eovaldi
I mean, Eovaldi
just based
for
on
him,
age.
his ERA, like he's constantly in that like 3.75 to 3.90 range for his ERA. Whereas Buehler, when he was at his best, was in like the mid to upper twos. And Eovaldi is on the back nine of his career at this point. I think that with him, I'm just spitballing here. 12 to 16 million a year, whereas Buehler, I think, could command 14 to 20 million a year based on what he's done in the past and what he did in the postseason. But I'm usually surprised by these. I'll think a guy is worth 20 million a year, and then he signs for 3 years, 39 million. I'm like, how the hell did he only sign for that amount? You know what I mean? And Buehler could be one of those guys where he just signs a 1-year make good deal, goes out, dominates, and then he tests the free agent market again next year. I can 100% see him doing that, especially after that postseason performance. And if that's what he does, Orioles could play in those waters.
I guess maybe I'd be.
I said Buehler when I said that, right?
I think so. Yeah, Buehler. Yeah, the one year deal with Buehler for Buehler. Yeah, I think that would make sense for him as well, especially because he hasn't, because he pitched 200 innings in 2021. Buehler did, and he just hasn't. He was injured and he got injured like halfway through 22. Didn't pitch in 23. Was obviously still battling back from the injuries during this past season. So it is. It is a little risky. Like Walker Buehler on paper is a little risky. I think a 1-year deal actually would make a lot of sense for him. Eovaldi's got talking with Stan the fan is he loves it. I know Stan loves Eovaldi, so he's obviously naturally talked me into him as well. And he's a guy that he has that playoff acumen. Like he's also had a lot of playoff success, Nick and Eovaldi. So I like both of them. I wouldn't be mad at a 1-year contract for Buehler. I wouldn't be. I'm not sure what the contract for Eovaldi might look like. I guess it'd have to be multi-year, but I'd be happy with both of those guys.
2 years with an option, 1 year with an option, something like that for Eovaldi. I think he wants to go to a place where he has an opportunity to win a World Series. Daniel Pitts, I think the Orioles tax is real. We have to overpay to get any top free agent. I don't know, man. I think that's just the Orioles fan PTSD. I think we're in the dawning of a new era, so to speak. I think next offseason, if we're in a similar situation where it's like the Orioles didn't spend and they underperformed, in the playoffs, I think that's when we have that conversation. I have to see an offseason with David Rubenstein as the owner first, before I can say that the Orioles tax is real. Because money talks, and if you're willing to spend, now you have a hitter, a ballpark that's mostly pitcher friendly, but the hitters still have an opportunity now. I don't know that that's a thing anymore. Just a bit outside, Elias has made it clear he's not willing to pay the guys what it's going to take. He goes on to say it's a philosophical thing, not an ownership thing. I don't know, man. Elias was with the Cardinals. He was with the Astros. They had great farm systems, built their teams up the right way, and then they paid money to the players that were worth the money. I mean, the Cardinals did it with Goldschmidt, with Arenado. They did it with Albert Pujols. The Astros did it with Verlander. They did it with what's his name? Altuve. I think that they did it with Beltran, a decent contract with him. I think for the right player, they're willing. Mike Elias is willing to spend the money. I don't think he's going to I don't think he's going to go out and sign Clay Holmes to a top of the market deal. I don't think he's going to do that. But I think that he may be willing to overpay for Max Fried or Corbin Burns. I don't think it's a philosophical thing that he's not going to pay players what they're worth. And then he goes on to say, but maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. Let's hold out hope for the pleasant surprise.
I mean, and that is an interesting, bringing up Altuve. Like, what if this all season consists of they lock down extensions for, say, like Adley Rutschman and Grayson? Well, is Grayson a Scott Boras guy?
I don't think so. I know Gunnar is, and I think
so. Like that's I'm hesitant to say Gunnar just because I know it's not going to happen. They're not going to extend Gunnar right now. But like Adley, let's say they lock down Adley, Westberg, and Grayson, and then they don't get a top end. I mean, it is going to be tough. They trade for Crochet and they sign like Tyler O'Neill as well. What does that offseason look like? Like how would you grade that offseason?
So you're saying.
We locked down Adley.
Lock down Adley.
Yeah, trade for Crochet.
Trade for Crochet.
Sign O'Neill, Tyler O'Neill.
Sign O'Neill. Okay.
And then add, and maybe not necessarily Westberg and Grayson, but let's say they lock down two other guys that are going to be part
lock
of this
down
team.
Two other guys that. I mean, it's a good off season. It's a really good off season. We know what the Orioles team needs are. You know, if you're gonna trade for Crochet, you're gonna lock down Adley, you're gonna sign O'Neill, and then lock down Grayson and the Jordan Westberg. I think Westberg's a Boris client. Okay. It's a good off season, but you still have holes.
Yeah.
You still have holes. You still have a hole in your rotation. You still have a hole in your bullpen. It's a good off season, but I think it's, doing too much of stuff that can be done next year to appease a fan base. I don't think that it makes sense to lock down Adley, Westberg, and Grayson this year when you've got other fish to fry right now.
Right.
So for me, I'd be happy with it, but I'd be like, well, why didn't you spend some of that money on a free agent who could have helped you this season?
And they're probably going to say, these are guys that we have in our building. We know who these guys are. We know the character of these guys, and we trust those guys. I mean, yeah, Westberg is a Boris client. You're right. So I guess he unlikely that one's part of it. But I don't know. I feel like they do need to send some sort of message to the fan base, and if that's, I think it could be accomplished in similar ways. If signing a player for $200 million or extending a current Oriole for $200 million. So,
yeah, no, it just depends on who they extend and if it's pertinent to do it right now. Mm-hmm. Jordan Westberg's not pertinent right now, and neither is Grayson Rodriguez. But Adley, because Adley has that one extra year of control, one less year of control. Right. We'll see. Sorry, just a bit outside says facts in the wild card era, 1995 to present, 26 to 29 teams to win a World Series, ranked in the top half of Major League Baseball on opening day payroll. 20 of those were in the top 10. The Orioles are going to be there. They're going to get into the top half of Major League Baseball payroll. We haven't even hit the winter meetings yet. We're still a week away from that. Just because they haven't done it yet doesn't mean that they aren't going to. And you look, the Orioles had a payroll about $160 million in 2016 and 2017. When they were trying to win a World Series, and that was under a cheap owner. They're going to spend the money. You're saying you need to spend to win. They know that, and they will.
And they're going to spend it.
Yeah. They're just going to spend it willy-nilly. They're going to spend it wisely. Exactly. We need bats, so he's not going to sign one. We're going to need Mayo, etc. Then he says, "Great show, guys. Thank you. Appreciate all your interaction. Thanks for tuning in with us today." They're going to need Mayo. Mayo's going to need to hit, but Mayo could also, if they're going to trade for Crochet, Mayo's probably out the door. Because he can't play third base. They're not going to put him in the outfield. So they want him to play first base with his 70-grade arm. And can he prove that he can play first base at a high level? I think that they really want to see what Ryan Mountcastle can do with the new left field dimensions and see that if he can get back to being the player they thought he was going to be when he had 33 home runs as a rookie.
He's been so good defense. Like the strides that he's made at first base as a defensive player are unreal. It's very. I love Ryan Mountcastle as a player.
He's been a Gold Glove finalist each of the last 2 years. The difference is noticeable when he's out there compared to when Ryan O'Hearn's out there. Mm-hmm. Daniel says, I feel like the Orioles moving the wall back and then immediately back in is kind of embarrassing to the team. Not really. I mean, it was 3 years. They did it for 3 years, and then they realized we're not going to get any free agents to sign here that are right-handed power hitters. Like Bregman, you could take yourself right off that list before they move the wall back. And now that there's potential. I still don't think it happens, but there's potential there. I think that it actually more so speaks to the team's willingness to
adjust. Yeah, and adapt.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what's going on.
Adit says, if they sign Teoscar, Evaldi, Buehler, Finnegan, Estevez, and a backup catcher, what would you grade the offseason? That's an A. That's an A. You signed Teoscar Hernandez, who's arguably the top free agent hitter, not named Juan Soto, and you get Evaldi and Buehler to add to your rotation. Yeah, you don't really have an ace there, but Buehler could be an ace if he gets back to where he was. And
Grayson could be an ace.
You've got a rotation filled with really solid number twos. And Grayson, he's only pitched 2 seasons. He had an injury this past year. Grayson could be that ace. I think that when Grayson wants to, he will ram that ball down your throat.
Yeah.
And you sign Pitt or Estevez and a backup catcher. I think James McCann's coming back. I think James McCann's going to be here.
And Bradish coming back to the middle of the year as well. Like, I don't want to harp on it too much just because it is, it's still Tommy John. So it's like I think you add Bradish to that rotation as well in the second half of the season at some point. That also looks pretty good.
Absolutely. About to get out of here, guys. Just a few more comments here. Daniel Pitt says, predict when you think the Orioles will have their big first signing of the offseason. My guess it'll be really late around the start of spring training. I think they're going to sign somebody at the winter meetings. Mm-hmm. I think that it might not be a big name, but I could see them signing like a Kyle Finnegan or some kind of reliever, or maybe they go out and they sign Nathan Eovaldi at the winter meetings. I don't think it's going to be the main guy that they get this offseason, but I think they'll make a move or two at the winter meetings.
I also think that. What was the date of when that was December 7th or 6th that they signed Kimbrel?
Yeah, I think it was the first day of the winter meetings last year.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll necessarily be that. I think it'll be they'll sign somebody in December. It may, like, probably by the end of that week. I'd say by December 14th, give or take.
Unless you count Das Cameron.
Unless Eric already happened.
Right. Eric Hawkins-Smith, do you think we can trade for a playoff experienced clutch hitter that doesn't need to be a full-time starter? We need someone that has been there, done that in October where the moment isn't too big for them. I have no idea who that would be at this point.
Yeah, like
they could have been JD
Tommy Pham. Yeah, like
it could have been JD Martinez or Tommy Pham last year, this past season, and it didn't happen. I have no idea who that guy could be this season. And then finally,
two names, honestly.
Right. Randall Fracassi says Povich has the skills but lacks control and confidence. He's not ready mentally. Really good in September, but Buck always says don't be fooled by what you see in spring training and what you see in September. Povich, they're going to give him an opportunity. He's going to get that opportunity. He's earned that opportunity. And so we'll see what he's able to do once the season starts, but I'm intrigued by what I saw from him the second half of the season for sure. That's going to do it for us here on the Bat Around. Griffin Bass, thank you so much for joining us. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, I guess just Glenn Clark Radio, 10 a.m. Right here on Press Box every morning, 10 a.m. to about noon-ish. We'll be talking a lot of Ravens, but we will obviously be covering the winter meetings as well, and whenever something happens, we're obviously going to talk about it when it comes to baseball. But right now, it is certainly Ravens focused because they're winning football games, which is good.
Absolutely. Big game coming up against the Eagles this weekend. The two top rushers in the league going up against two of the youngest, most electric quarterbacks in football in Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. You can also find Griffin every week on Press Box's Project Game Day following every Ravens game. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our listeners and fans. Without you, we absolutely do